Hello everyone and welcome to today's episode. It is Rania speaking to you from London. I'm currently studying for an MSc in Project Management at the University of Westminster, and together with my fellow colleague and team member Rebecca, we'll be presenting this episode of PM Radio today. Don't we all like to make a good impact in the world, to change things for the better, to grow as individuals and communities? In fact, these are the ethos of responsible project management. Because being responsible and trying to give back to society is becoming an integral part of modern and contemporary project management. We are here today representing Project Plateful, a team of 6 students and one of the 13 project teams formed to help raise awareness and funds for our elected charity, the Felix Project, as part of our assessment for a module called Project Management in Practice. Thank you to PM Radio for hosting us today and giving us the opportunity to raise our voices and tell you all about our efforts in becoming responsible project managers. In doing so, today we are hosting 2 guests, Phil Gray from the charity, the Felix Project, to help us understand more about their efforts in London, and Nick Lambrou, Principal Lecturer, the module leader of Project Management in Practice, and one of the first shapers and signatories on the Responsible Project Management Manifesto, first introduced by academics at Bournemouth University in 2018. My lovely colleague Rebecca will have the pleasure of interviewing them today. But first, let's have a quick look at some recent news in the world of projects. New electric car hoovers up pollution from other vehicles. A driverless electric car concept is capable of hoovering up pollution left by other vehicles as it drives along, leaving clean air in its wake, its designers claim. The Aero is being designed by British Heatherwick Studio for the Chinese green vehicle firm IM Motors and could go into production as soon as 2023. It features a dining room-style space inside the cabin that can be turned into a double bed, allowing passengers to continue to slumber during a commute to work. The vehicle will run on electric power, producing no fossil fuel pollutants as it moves around the city. But the car goes further in its environmental ambition. Heatherwick confirmed it would be equipped with a state-of-the-art HEPA filtering system attached to the undercarriage that can clean up pollution particles. The HEPA, high-efficiency particulate air filter, will be stuck to the bottom of the vehicle and through a mesh system will trap harmful particles. Polluted air carrying particles of harmful chemicals generated by other vehicles on the road passes under the Aero and enter the HEPA filter. The particles of various sizes are then trapped inside its fibers and through a series of more intricate traps are removed from the flowing air, leaving clean air behind. Inside, the car has a customizable interior that can be configured into multiple functional spaces, including a moving room or space for your life, the firm said. Thomas Heatherwick, founder of Heatherwick Studio, said the car was designed to be more than just another electric car that doesn't pollute the air. Designed to simultaneously address the global space shortage, Aero is also a multifunctional room with extra space for dining, working, gaming, or even sleeping. What a nice car. The article did not say how much it will be though. Carbon capture technology, a renewed backing despite past failures. There has been for long a simple proposal for dealing with the carbon that causes climate problems. Send it back underground. But carbon capture and storage, CCS, whereby CO2 emissions from industrial and power plants are pumped into geological reservoirs, such as disused oil fields, has failed to take off, marred by a history of costly failures. Despite this, however, the technology is still being tutored in blueprints to achieve goals for net zero carbon emissions, including those of oil majors such as Shell and BP. Norway is revisiting CCS a decade after its first attempt was abandoned with cost overruns, while Japan has included CCS in its 2050 net zero climate plans. Renewed backing for CCS comes even though environmental groups continue to criticize it, seeing it as a costly distraction that prolongs the use of fossil fuels at the expense of green technologies. CCS is a technology that will be useful at the margins for a few specific uses, not a central tenet of the shift to net zero, which is how it's being promoted, says Mike Childs, head of research at Friends of the Earth, an environmental group. But there is scope for the technology to grow. Currently, only 40 million tons a year of CO2 is stored globally via CCS, a fraction of the world's total annual emissions of 36 billion tons. The International Energy Agency says CCS must play a major role in a shift to net zero emissions, while the Global CCS Institute, a think tank that promotes the technology, argues the urgency of getting to net zero by 2050 means we have to deploy all the solutions we have. The UK to become the Saudi Arabia of wind energy. On the south bank of the River Humber, on England's east coast, land once considered for coal-fired power station holds the hopes of the UK offshore wind industry. The 217-hectare site, close to the port of Immingham, is one of two projects in the east of England that UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson said will put the wind in the sails of a green industrial revolution. Owned by Able UK, a private industrial group, the Humber site will become a specialist port with deep water quays, where manufacturers and suppliers can deliver components for wind farms and help create up to 3,000 green jobs. Together with a facility on the River Tees, it has been awarded a share of up to £95 million of government money as the Prime Minister seeks to turn the country into the Saudi Arabia of wind power, not just developing it at home, but also exporting it to the world. UK offshore wind has come a long way since the first turbines in 2000. New turbines can be almost at the height of the Shard and are now the lowest cost means we have of generating electricity. Each sweep of a blade can now power a house for over 2 days. It has kept the lights on and our economy growing, with renewable energy companies investing £4 billion and creating over 2,000 jobs, even during the peak of lockdown. Furthermore, the Prime Minister's commitment to floating wind should also be congratulated. In developing this technology earlier than our rivals in France, Japan, and the USA, we not only unlock new areas of UK waters for development, but we place ourselves at the technological forefront of a global market which will eclipse the market for fixed bottom turbines in the 2030s, wrote Philip Dunn for The House. Gusto aims to double workforce after pandemic mailbox boom. Gusto plans to double its workforce to 2,000 by next year and open 2 new distribution warehouses after the British food box delivery startup benefited from the boom in home-cooked meals during the pandemic. Gusto on Monday will announce its first year of profit since it was founded in 2012. With underlying earnings of $18.2 million in 2020, compared with a loss of $9.1 million the year before. Revenue more than doubled last year. The company said growth had continued into the first quarter of this year, as the UK extended its COVID-19 lockdown, when it had sold a further 25 million meals. Gusto sells boxes of ingredients with recipes to make one of about 50 options. Demand has surged during the coronavirus crisis, with people forced to stay at home to eat. But founder Timo Bolt said it had been a growing trend at a similar rate before COVID-19. He said that demand was being driven by the broader trend for people to eat more easily, healthily, and with a great focus on the environment. Gusto uses algorithms to predict supply needs at its manufacturing sites, which it claims cuts food waste to 2%, while precise portion sizes mean less waste in the home. People are not going to go back to pushing trolleys and queuing again, he added. On the back of this growth, Gusto wants to double capacity by the end of 2022, adding 2 fulfillment centres in Essex and Cheshire. Gusto offers 50 weekly recipes, including those offered under a range branded with trainer Joe Wicks, who is also an investor in the company. Its founder said that 500 million evening meals were eaten each week in the UK, and 76% of people cook from scratch. So the pandemic is really changing people's behavior, hopefully for the better, and some businesses are benefiting from this change. Gusto claims that their food boxes can cut food waste at home and at large. Moving from here, it is now time to welcome our guests. I would like to also invite our next presenter and our interviewer for today, Rebecca. Thank you very much for listening, and over to you, Rebecca.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Rania, for sharing today's top stories. A big welcome to our guests, Nick and Phil. Hi, guys.
Hello, everyone. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you both doing?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Thanks so much for having me on.
Great. I'll start our discussion today with you, Phil. Thanks so much for joining us today.
No problem.
We're just after lunch now, so we're all wondering if you cooked up something nice.
I'm yet to have lunch, but I've got some aubergine parmigiana, which is in the fridge. So I'll be finishing that off with my housemate probably.
Great. So for those that aren't familiar, can you tell us a little bit about the Felix Project?
Yeah, of course. So the Felix Project is a food redistribution charity. We just celebrated our first 5 years. And what we do is we collect and rescue food that can no longer be sold and would otherwise go to landfill or anaerobic digestion plants. And we take that food to our depots where it's sorted and loaded into vans, where it's then redistributed to our charity partners across London, of which there are nearly 1,000. Of the food that we collect and redistribute is all in date, safe and nutritious, and includes a large proportion of fresh fruit and vegetables. We pride ourselves on the fact that we can, so about 70% of our food is fresh that we can redistribute, and we send that food to charity supporting vulnerable people all over London, including those who are unemployed, people on low incomes, children and families, people who are sick, key workers during the pandemic, and those who are isolated, homeless, refugees, asylum seekers, a real smorgasbord of vulnerable people.
Wow, so it sounds like there's a lot of charities that really depend on your work, kind of bringing that food waste to them and making sure that they can achieve their missions as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And so can you tell us a little bit about your role at the Felix Project?
So I started at the Felix Project about 2-3 weeks before the pandemic, and I am a trust fundraising officer. So I work in the fundraising team, and I work predominantly with trust and foundations, which are organisations which is set up to basically give to charities. There are a number of other major donors, individual givers. I work predominantly with trust. I spend a lot of my time researching trusts and foundations that kind of have aligned long-term charitable goals. I'm trying to make sure that we're a fit and our right applications or proposals to them, impact of those grants.
So kind of ensuring that you're getting the funds you need to make your mission happen, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's a real pleasure to engage with these people, because they want to, we share collective goals in reducing food waste and getting food to people that need it, and it's a real pleasure to report back on the success of their grants.
Great. So coming over to you a little bit more personally, I guess. You started your Instagram Fill Your Face back in 2019. What motivated you to create this kind of themed page around food?
It started largely as a hobby, really. I was making a lot of food every day, in fact. And I just got started taking pictures of it, and I thought I'd share it with people. Really, it's just for me basically. But over time, I got a few more followers, and I decided to try and sell some food, which I did last Christmas, which was fun. I made veggie and vegan kind of alternatives for Christmas dinner, and sold them in my local town of Abingdon. And then since then, I've gone more Felix oriented, really. And I did a recipe video for the Felix Project, which went live on their Instagram as part of the 5-year celebration for our birthday. And since then, I've gone through a bit of a rebrand and done a lot of Felix stuff.
Yeah, we really love the series on fakeaways, kind of ways to do, to use food waste to make your favorite takeaways at home. It's a really good kind of initiative for people to reinvent what they're cooking at home. I think a lot of people might be sick of home cooking, but it's great to always take a new perspective, and especially when you're highlighting food waste like that.
Yeah, people, oh, no, go on, sorry.
No, sorry. So actually, just coming off the subject of food waste, can you define a little bit more what food waste is for people that might not know or might not be aware of it, of kind of this concern?
Well, I suppose the Felix Project would think about food waste in terms of surplus food. So from food from the commercial food industry that can no longer be sold. That's the sort of food that we're concerned with. But waste is just, I suppose, it's things that people just throw in the bin, things that aren't being consumed, basically.
Right. So I think in the UK, some of the biggest problems are around bread and potatoes and bananas.
Yeah, I think the top 5 is bread, milk, potatoes, cheese, and apples.
Great. So the Felix Project kind of makes sure that you're collecting some of the surplus from farmers, and kind of what other partners?
So all sorts of suppliers from the food industry. We work with supermarkets, we work with farms, restaurants, cafes, wholesalers, other food retailers. Yeah, we just collect that surplus food because none of these businesses want to throw their food away. No one wants to see it go to landfill. They'd like to see it used, obviously. So we just are a channel to make sure that it gets to people that need it.
Yeah, it seems like a no-brainer. I'm sure it kind of breaks the hearts of these businesses as well to sort of see it go in the bin and not be in kind of people's bellies, and making sure that everyone is fed. So it's great to see what the Felix Project is doing in recuperating that and making sure it gets to those in need.
Well, yeah, of course. Aside from just the food going to waste and not getting to people, it's all money, isn't it, that is being wasted. And
it also kind of helps these businesses like achieve their goals of being more sustainable as well, right?
Yeah.
Great. So coming back to kind of your role and what you do at the Felix Project, what kind of tactics does the Felix Project use to raise awareness or kind of educate people on this important cause?
I think largely it is done through social media at the moment. Even though Marcus Rashford, he's not actually partnered with Felix, he's an excellent case study of the sort of power that these celebrities and figures have on social media, and that he mobilised thousands of people and engendered a kind of government U-turn. So we try to focus with the press and celebrities to disseminate our message. And we have brilliant partners in the Evening Standard and the Independent, and we've had our Food for London Now campaign throughout the pandemic, raised a hell of a lot of money, and I think it's tantamount to a real shift in public consciousness that people realised in the pandemic that millions of people in London were going without, and the food shortage is not the issue. There's enough food, it's just not getting to people.
Right, and when it doesn't get to people, that food then ends up in landfill, which can have kind of some environmental impacts. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so for every 1 metric ton of food that we can rescue, we prevent the emission of about 5 tons of carbon emissions. So food going to landfill has a real negative effect on the environment.
Wow, yeah, that's crazy. I mean, we hear lots about in the environment about kind of cows with CO2 emissions, but we don't think so much about the food waste kind of rotting in our landfills and causing that CO2, right?
Yeah, well, the production of all of these products, they have a carbon footprint in themselves through the irrigation of the land, and all the like environmental cost of producing them in the first place. So for them to go in the bin is such a waste.
Yeah, definitely. And so on your page, Fill Your Face, you also share some recipes related to kind of the Felix Project cause. Kind of how do you prioritize those recipes, or how do you come up with them, I guess?
I mean, if I'm honest, it's largely down to what I've got in my cupboards and fridge. I try not to go and buy stuff for them. Well, with the food waste stuff, I try to prioritize things that most people will have in their fridge or in their cupboards. And then I guess it's just a case of looking at recipes online and seeing what I can manipulate, or what ingredients from a particular recipe I can omit. So, for example, the bread and butter pudding can be that I did on my Instagram, for those that don't know, as part of the Project Plateful fundraising event. It can be an incredibly indulgent dish with loads of double cream and loads of egg yolks, where you would take the whites out to get a really kind of tender custard. So for that, I kind of omitted some of those things that I'd have to go and buy, and I used all of the eggs, including the whites. You get a slightly firmer custard, but you use less. Well, there's less waste, basically.
That's what we're really looking to do, right? It makes no sense when you're making a recipe. If it's at home and it still turns out well, why throw out half of the ingredient? So it's good to use that up.
Yeah, and well, I chose that recipe specifically because you can use any sort of baked good really with it, any sort of bread that you had lying around, because all you're doing is creating a sort of something that will absorb the custard. So it doesn't really matter what you put in. I had some like stale sliced bread and some leftover croissants and a bit of breakfast muffin, which I just tore up and chucked all together. So you can really just basically use what you've got and be as resourceful as you can.
Great. And then something I noticed and would love to speak to you about is how the Felix Project actually, once you've collected this food waste or received donations, how do you guys differ in how you deliver the goods to the various charities and your partners? Kind of what's the eco aspect there?
So we're constantly looking at ways in which we can become more green. At the moment, we have a Central London Green Scheme where we use no vans. It's all done by volunteers, walk or cycle the route, which obviously prevents the emission of carbon. And we have recently implemented a new kind of software system in our depots called RouteMe, which was developed for us pro bono, which basically has enabled us to digitalize some of the stock control systems in our depots. So we're trying to use much less paper through doing that, and it means that our volunteers, they will have access to a smartphone or an iPad, and they can get all the information in real time. And we're also looking at electric vans at the moment. There's a bit of an issue with we can't bring them all in because the technology is not quite there at the moment. Because all of our vans have like a chiller built in, the battery life of an electric van with a chiller running is about 20 to 30 miles. And on some of our longer routes, they just wouldn't make it back. So I think as that technology advances, it's definitely something we'll transition into.
That sounds great. And it's a great steps towards, a more sustainable charity and supporting your mission of kind of also helping the environment as you guys do your great work. Just a last question for you, and then I'm going to pass over to Nick to talk a little bit more about sustainable project management. So lastly, I just wanted to ask kind of today with someone donating, what can 10 pounds kind of get out of a donation? What can the Felix Project do with sort of, 10 pounds?
So a £10 donation will enable us to collect approximately 28 kilograms of food that would otherwise have gone to waste, and cover the operational cost of distributing that food to a number of charities, and essentially will enable us to provide about 61 meals. So
wow,
it's a lot of bang,
61 meals. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a great return on your investment. Just at £10 is 61 meals. When you really sit down and think about that, it's a hell of a lot of food for a lot of people. So yeah, please donate.
Yeah, 61 meals. I mean, definitely can't buy that with £10 on our own. So it's great to hear how far that a £10 note can really stretch with the Felix Project. Thanks so much for your time today, Phil. And I'll welcome you back at the end for a Q&A with our audience.
Sure.
I'll definitely think twice about throwing away that stale bread and look to make something delicious like the pudding you mentioned on your page. So I'll look for the recipe there. I'm now going to welcome our next guest, Nick Lambrou, to the chat. So we'll just welcome him now. Great. Hi, Mr. Lambrou. How are you today?
I'm fine. Thank you. I'm enjoying the program, actually. It is fascinating to see what can happen and what £10 can actually do. I'm impressed.
I know I definitely can't stretch it that far on my own. So it's great to see when we do make a donation that it does go quite far. So you're no stranger to PM Radio Westminster. I know you were on just a couple episodes ago, but we couldn't wait to welcome you back. It's no secret that 2021 has been designated the year of responsible project management with support of international bodies such as APM, PMI, IPMA, etc., etc. We're also approaching some deadlines within the UN 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which were drawn up as a, quote, blueprint to achieving a better and more sustainable future for all. As a cohort, the MSc students are all working together to raise funds for the Felix Project. Can you first tell us a little bit about the assignment that we're working on now and kind of how we came here today for those that are not part of the University of Westminster or our program?
Okay, fair enough. We've got this MSc, the Project Management MSc. It has a module that is called Project Management in Practice. And when we were thinking, how can we actually make you do a real project for real so that you, the students, actually get a better feel of what project management is, and not all the academic stuff, but actually the real practice, it became a no-brainer. It's one of these ideas that once you have it, it looks like an obvious idea, that we would send you in groups, in teams to do some charity work and measure the benefits, because benefit is all we're teaching you about, and all leadership is about the benefit and not the product, etc. And we then decided that since we are trying to teach you leadership, that the best way to do things is to empower you to actually just do something. And it is self-contained, and I hope you enjoy it. It ticks all the boxes of practical work, and it does good also, which is like a bonus. The ethics bits almost comes as a bonus on this one. It just happens that we are living in years where we are getting a bit scared about sustainability and about the very earth, the planet, and the damage we have done to it. So that helps push the envelope, if you wish. And I hope that your generation, will not do the mistakes that my generation has done. It's almost penance in some respects.
Definitely. I think that kind of led us to select the Felix Project this year, both for their sustainable mission and also for the part that it's close to home where we're studying here. With the project, kind of what skills will we be developing as MSc students towards our future careers in project management?
Indeed, I am fascinated by the choices that the students do make. You always choose charities that I would not have chosen myself, sort of. I think differently than you, but and also it is important that you yourselves actually vote for the charity and actually own that charity itself. And we've had some great charities in the past. We've got Mind, Plastic Oceans, Age UK, War Child, British Heart Foundation. And unfortunately, twice we've had Syria relief because of problems in that unfortunate at this moment country. And that span of not choosing the same thing every year is is fascinating. I find it fascinating. And also a little thing that I haven't shared with many people is that the students who actually make the winning proposal are usually not the better students in the class. This is something that has always impressed me, that the people who are good in the academic work are not necessarily those who are the better project managers. And the series of proposals actually for every one of these projects, I don't know about this year, we're still marking you, not you personally, but are the students who sort of have a feel for project management, a feel for doing things, and maybe academically they're not as good. It makes no difference. And I think that's the beauty of leadership and project management itself.
So this
so
project
I'm impressed by the...
This project in a way kind of levels the sorry, this project in a way kind of levels the playing field then for the various groups, kind of let their talent shine.
Indeed, because your groups, you have to motivate each other, you have to be conscientious, you have to have emotional resilience when things are not going well. You go through the phases of maybe you argue, maybe you expect someone to have done work and they have not done it. And it's everything about project management in one. And what amazes me and amuses me is that most of you students, you do like this group work, because group work itself is not very favorable among students, usually. But this one, I think, has a name, and this sustainability thing and the responsibility thing, which I think is very, very useful for you as human beings, not as students anymore.
Yes, of course. So now that we've talked a little bit about the assignment and kind of what brought us here today, I wanted to bring us back to kind of responsible project management. So we talked a lot about the Felix Project already in this episode and the great work that they're doing. Obviously, they have the eco responsibility of how they deliver and how they're recuperating waste that would normally cause greenhouse gases, et cetera, But how is responsible project management different in the charity sector versus the private businesses? Kind of how do you apply that differently?
Indeed, that is a very, very difficult question, actually. How can you, first of all, be responsible, and secondly, have the power to put into practice a responsible idea, especially since we're not even in agreement as to exactly what sustainability is, and there's quality of life, and then there is sort of, will we stop flying by aeroplanes, for example? This idea is actually difficult. So we have to even define what we mean by responsible. We have different ideas of how much sacrifices we may have to do, if there are any, and how can we do things by new efficiencies and new ways of doing things. Like Felix, for example, they've extended the supply chain of food, and they have moved it one notch further out, and suddenly, as out of magic, you can feed more people, and that in itself is important. But the motto that as soon as you open the responsible project management website, and I hope you visit and become members of it, has this beautiful saying from Margaret Mead, the anthropologist, a very important lady, actually, that people should know more about, controversial herself, actually. And I wrote it down just to read it out to you. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed, organized citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only way that can ever change something. So we start defensively by saying we are too small. What can I do? But this is actually the wrong question, because everything that has been done, and Mead is an example of that, has been done by the push that starts from the bottom up. So we've got this idea that only from the top we can do changes. That is changing drastically, and in the 21st century, where are we? Where collective thinking and ideas spread immediately and quickly. There is much more bottom up, as long as it is not silly. And this is what we're doing. And as you advance in your career, we are hoping you will advance in your careers. You will be doing interesting things to improve sustainability within the project that you will be managing. And then when you become program managers and corporate, more important corporate people, then you will also be deciding on more responsible projects. So you can do from small things, from just planting a tree. You're asked to build a house and just plant a tree out of it. From that all the way to where your cement will come from and whether it is a sustainable journey itself. So there's thousands of places. Like leaders can be everywhere. Yes, small people, big people, we are all have this leadership ability. And so indeed, as soon as you think about it, it is not a question. We can do a lot of things, always step by step. That is the important thing, step by step.
Yeah, I think actually what Phil mentioned about trying to make their delivery system a little bit more eco-friendly by kind of bringing in on technology and by choosing, electric vans where they can. Are those the kind of tough decisions, that project managers are able to implement, or kind of how do project managers come in with the conversation of sustainability?
In the end, it is very easy. It is about, in the end, we do accounting and all that, and then we do the ideas, the sustainable ideas actually cut costs. Yes, this idea that the restaurant or the supermarket will have surplus, and then Felix comes in and says, okay, give me that surplus. You are actually saving the supermarket the cost of trying to get rid of that, what has happened and becomes waste. So actually many sustainable and many responsible ideas are simply thinking on the supply chain and actually saving money, not the again, responsible project management comes under sort of a fear that it will be more expensive. What we'll do will be more expensive, or it will be more expensive in the short term, and the ideas are very long term. That is not so. It is so in some cases, and in some cases it is not. Now, for example, we have to pay so much money to hopefully clean the air from CO2 and all that. That means that someone else, previous generations, have shifted the cost onto us. Yes, had we done something, a stitch in time sort of earlier on, then we would not have to pay so much now. And that waste itself that becomes a producer of gases itself, because it is all organic matter, that again is avoided through the idea. So it is actually cost saving, not increased cost. That is the beauty of it. As long as we think, and we think globally, and we help each other, and we work globally, that is it. And we have shown that we can work globally because of the pandemic. We have worked globally. And for example, now it is interesting to see India, that is actually the biggest supplier of vaccines, actually reversing. We are reversing this, and now we are trying to help India at this moment. That is how the globe, as soon as the globe decides to work together, that is good. And we do have a decent American president at the moment, and not the previous one, who I will not even mention.
We won't get too far into politics on this episode, but it sounds like what you're mentioning here is kind of the 17 sustainability goals set out by the UN. That the 17th goal is actually about partnerships, right? And about first world nations helping third world nations, or partnerships across nations.
Precisely, and that 17th goal is the one that is the least misunderstood, because it is all about partnerships. That was a beautiful goal to add at the bottom of the list. The United Nations did very well, because without that, everything else actually breaks down. It becomes local, and local means usually do not provide good solutions, usually.
Previous to 2015, when the goals were set out, the previous set of goals were set just for third world nations, right? So this kind of idea of partnerships and sort of putting some of the onus on more developed nations to kind of help other countries and other projects sort of brings about bigger projects, which is kind of more opportunity for project management.
Indeed, this is the beauty of project management, because it is our actions that will actually deliver the changes. And if the changes themselves are thought out well, and they are good changes, then we will be delivering good things. That is important. And the shift from the developing countries to the whole world is a brilliant move, because precisely it is the developed world that has actually created most of the problems with climate, definitely, but also problems to the developing world. So it is this help me sort of ball of that we had before, that the third world will be begging somehow for help and needing help is a very wrong way of looking at things, and accountabilities and responsibilities. So yes, the new version is much cleverer.
Definitely. I think it does bring about this idea of partnership, which is so great in this very globalized world. You know, when something happens in one part of the world, there is an effect we see across the globe. We can see that in the shipping delays that happened with a few weeks ago, or various other projects that kind of either fail or succeed. I wanted to ask you one last question. We're kind of short on time, and I'm very sorry, because this so far is so interesting towards the sustainable project management. But I wanted to ask you a little bit, you're mentioning about saving costs and about solving problems by choosing some of the more sustainable options and choosing to go that route, especially in the long run. So what would be kind of even the top 1 or 2 reasons why a company might decide to continue doing what they're doing if it's not sustainable?
It depends how, in what way it is not sustainable. Attitudes, for example, are changing, and therefore the customers may decide to walk away from a company because that company is doing something that is felt to be unsustainable. So that alone is an important push for corporate responsibility, because this is really what we're talking about, corporate responsibility. There has to be some responsibility. So it is, as I suggested, also you are actually making money out of sustainability. The sustainability ideas are not breaking money. There was one piece of the news today that said that we've got 2,000 new jobs at Humber for wind generated energy. Yes, so this is actually energetic. It is vibrant. It is not stopping the quality of life. It is actually increasing quality of life in a very interesting way, and it is all because we are thinking about new ways of doing things. So soon they will be like the motor vehicle that we have now will soon be out of date. It will be not sustainable anymore, and it will disappear. Businesses do evolve. That is the main thing. And if we involve responsibly, there is gain for everybody. And that is why, again, the responsible project management people, they've got the 3 P's: people, planet, and prosperity. Instead of profit, they call it prosperity. I think that is a beautiful word, but that is what we are talking about. We are all for the betterment, and betterment means that the hunger levels will rise. That is the sentence, you do understand what I'm saying, and everybody will be better off, not worse off. And there is no sacrificing half the world for the other half to leave world. That is actually wrong and bad, but also wrong, bad, and unsustainable, but also unprofitable. Also, this is it. This is the main thing, that there is profit in sustainability.
I think those 3 Ps and the message that, by choosing sustainable choices, we're actually going to prosper, not only from an environmental perspective, but from a profits perspective down the line. And so important as project managers that we do our part to kind of create a better future. So I think on that note, thank you so much, Nick, for your time. And I'm going to welcome Phil back. If you can stay with us for some questions from the audience, that'd be great. Hi, Phil. Welcome back.
Hello again.
So we're going to welcome some questions from the audience. I think you can see them down below. Can you see the questions there?
How do you measure the effectiveness of your fundraising campaigns? Well, I suppose if it's stuff on Instagram, we can check the insights and all of the kind of services that Instagram can provide to businesses accounts to see how many people we reach, the amount we raise through particular campaigns, and that sort of thing, and what works best. I mean, if I'm honest, I'm not sure what works best. I'd have to speak to someone in the marketing team for further insight on that.
I guess what you mentioned before in our discussion was about making sure that as a charity, you're making the most sustainable and cost-effective choices on your end, so that when you do receive the funds, they're stretching as far as 61 meals for £10.
Yeah.
Yep, that's a great question. Thank you so much, Nadia. A question from Samita. It is a great cause to work towards, specifically during the pandemic. Were there any challenges in procurement or distribution due to the pandemic?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in the very early days of the pandemic, we were anticipating a loss of quite a considerable chunk of money, and we were trying to put plans in place to mediate against that. But we completely changed our operation. We began using hauliers, so we could transport huge volumes of food very quickly. And we set up with City Harvest and FareShare that what we call the London Food Alliance, which basically enabled us to divvy up the London boroughs between us, and we took sole responsibility of getting food into emergency COVID kind of hubs, like giant food banks, where we would take as much food as we could to each of these boroughs to then disseminate by the local authorities of those boroughs. Lots of the organisations that we support closed during COVID, and what that meant was that we had to be quite dynamic and flexible about our deliveries, and if we needed to change location at the last minute, we'd have to do that. Or maybe some schools, we couldn't get a haulage truck onto the premises, so we had to be flexible with how we got food to people.
So in our lingo, I guess that would mean you're moving towards more of an agile project management methods, and trying to be really on your feet and making new decisions and making sure that the food doesn't spoil as you're trying to get it to the people that need it.
Yeah, well, we also had temporary depots during the pandemic as well, so because we had more food to store, and also as lots of people were kind of panic buying at the start of the pandemic, lots of the source of food that we would ordinarily get from supermarkets was depleting. But we also, I suppose, at the same time, lots of our suppliers from the hospitality industry had loads of excess food. So we got an influx of new suppliers and lots of partnerships with some quite high-end fine dining restaurants in London as well. So yeah, lots of people came together from the commercial food industry to help us at the time, and we're incredibly grateful for it.
Actually, just from my side as well, a new question was, sort of you expected to have this loss at the beginning of the pandemic, and now the Felix Project is working on a new depot, right? That's their next biggest kind of goal, is to open another depot. So that's a big shift. Kind of, what will that new depot mean for you as a charity?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a huge shift. Just to put the growth into context, in 2019, we delivered about 6.4 million meals to people in London, and across 2020, we delivered 21.1 million meals. We're now on track to deliver 38 million meals this year. So the growth has been exponential, and we're hoping by 2024 to be doing 100 million meals in London.
Wow.
The need at the moment, by the way, is approximately 118 million meals needed. So we're hoping to meet that demand as we move through the years. But yeah, the new depot will just be able to extend our reach into East London. We started with a depot in West London and then North London, and we got a depot in Deptford, South London, towards the tail end of 2020. But we didn't have a storage space or kind of delivery outlet in East London, so that's going to give us a reach there. We also got an adjacent kind of depot space next to our depot, where we'll have our very first professional kitchen, which will be turning some of the surplus food that we can't deliver. So, for example, some of the food we get in, if it's on the day of expiry, we can't send it out. But that kitchen will be able to take that food that we can't send out and turn it into meals, which can be delivered to people in Tupperware and things like that.
That's so great. And I think you managed to actually cover off Dylan's question that just came in about how many meals you were able to deliver last year. So glad to see we covered that off. And it's great to see that your goals are only growing for the coming year.
Yeah.
A question here from Theo. Have you considered using your logistics network to eliminate other forms of waste, i.e., clothing or toys or anything else?
I don't think it's something that our charity would do. Not that it's not a very admirable project, but I think we're predominantly focused on food and getting food to people that need it and reducing food waste. But the unique thing about our operational model is that it is completely replicable. If we're talking about food or other forms of waste, and in other areas of the country, we essentially collect surplus from businesses that don't want to throw it away for free and take it to people that need it. So it's something that could definitely be adopted by lots of other organizations.
You mentioned as well kind of your partnership with Fair Share and other charities as well to make your efforts a little bit easier to attain. Kind of, how do you guys share lessons learned, and how do you kind of create this community amongst various charities?
Well, long term, our goals are very much aligned. So we both want to essentially get more food to people that need it and reduce food waste in the UK. And we're always up for working collaboratively with partners in order to achieve those goals. So, for example, at the start, during 2020 and the pandemic, the Felix Project and Fair Share were both last mile food redistribution services. And we decided as part of our partnership towards the end of 2020 that Fair Share would divest or divorce themselves from their last mile operation and give us their Deptford depot and focus on sourcing food at a national scale. And we've joined their Fair Share network.
That's so great. It's so great to see you working together and it not being a competition, and kind of just realizing where, each of you might be able to best serve the community. So it's so great. I mean, I guess that comes partially with the mindset of working in charity work, but it's so great to see kind of those lessons learned share. So we have our last question here because we're almost at time. This question is for you, Nick. So in 3 words, what are the top skills needed for a responsible project manager working in any sector? And this question comes from Danya.
I don't do 3 words.
You don't do 3 words. Anyone who has you as a lecturer knows.
I've got 3: conscientiousness, resilience, and influence. These are 3 competences from our group of 12. These, I think, are important. But it's about it is an ethical question in the end, and conscientiousness is the important one. It's the trigger. and then influencing people and resilience when things do not go well.
That's a beautiful note to end on. Thank you so much, Nick and Phil, for joining us today. And thanks for the audience for participating. We're going to be joined now on screen by Project Plateful. So you can be introduced to our group. So we have Catalina, Samita, Donna, Vikram, and Rania and myself, and we're raising funds on behalf of the Felix Project as part of our module. So I'm going to pass over to Rania for some closing remarks.
Thank you, team, and Rebecca for the interview. And of course, a big thank you to our guests, Phil and Nick. So we have reached the end. Thank you for listening. And if you are feeling generous, please donate to Felix Project via our Instagram fundraiser or directly on the Felix Project via the link posted in the chat. And don't forget to subscribe to the PM Radio channel on YouTube. Stay safe, and from Project Plateful and PM Radio, have a great day. Goodbye.